play a significant role in workplace clashes. Ram Sundaram is the author of I Am Me and has spent much of his time studying human behavior, and he's here to talk to us today. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me on the show. It's wonderful being here.
And I want to get into your book in a moment because it is very interesting the way you've laid this out. And I know you deal with ego quite a bit in your book. But let's talk about, ego in the workplace and how it leads to conflict.
Okay. Well, first of all, let's talk about what the ego actually is. Because I think there's a misconception that the ego is a negative quality that people have, like excessive pride or arrogance. And all it is self-awareness. It's the awareness that we are individual beings and that all our body, our mind, our thoughts, our emotions, this is me, I am me. And that's the idea. So it doesn't exactly cause conflict on its own, but we let that idea consume us, we become self-absorbed. And especially in the workplace, which is a collective environment, when you're so individually focused, it kind of dilutes the whole relationship.
So that's when people say that their ego is out of control. That's when they're so focused. I know you talk about two different types of egos, the me and the we. Let's talk about those.
Well, there's the individual ego, which is the one I talked about. There's a collective ego. The strongest example of that would be a married couple. Because when you're in a relationship, even though you have two separate egos, you work together as one unit, because you realize what affects one affects the other. Other examples would be, say, a nuclear family, a city, a country, religion, for example. The workplace, ironically, is the weakest example, because you get hired into a workplace and you realize it's such a competitive environment, and depending on how well you do in it, it affects your future. So it's very hard to look at it from a collective perspective, but that's what you need to do, especially to avoid workplace conflict.
And let's further that, because you were talking about how to diffuse those tense situations when you're dealing with someone that you feel has an out of control ego, and you kind of have an activity for that. Let's talk about that.
Well, it comes down to empathy. And empathy is just your ability to relate to another human being. And one activity I suggest is kind of fun, actually. Well, you go out into the world, whether you're at a bus stop or a train station, and you pick an individual out. It's a complete stranger. You don't approach them directly, just from afar. Just study them, look at them for clues, and kind of imagine what their lives might be like. Just, where do they work? Are they married? Do they have children? And just paint a picture of what their lives might be. And it doesn't have to be accurate, you're just kind of imagining it. And what you're doing is you're spending a minute a day thinking about another individual. And it's like a baby step. It's going to seem very trivial and simplistic, but it does enhance your empathy.
So it's a way of kind of keeping your own ego in check.
In check, exactly. That's exactly what
Okay, let's talk about your book, I Am Me. And very interestingly, it's a collection of short stories dealing a lot with ego, and explain kind of the layout. This is very unique.
Well, initially I wanted to write 10 short stories that examine the linear journey we take as individuals from the time we're born to the time we die. But after I wrote the first draft, I realized that the stories felt incomplete, almost, because I was looking at one perspective, the individual. So I took the same 10 stories, the same 10 ideas, rather, and I wrote each one of them out from a collective perspective. So it's a two-way book. You read one half, you flip it over, then you read the other half. And each half is a separate book in itself, and there's almost a twin narrative. So they have the same structure, but they're completely different at the same time.
And what kind of feedback are you getting from people on this?
The first feedback I got was from a friend who said he liked the book. It took him 2 weeks to read it, but 3 weeks to figure out how to read it.
Because there's so many ways.
Exactly, right? There's so many ways. And that's what's fun about it, is that as a reader, you can choose your own way to read the book. There is no right or wrong way. It's just how you choose to read it.
And you're working on a novel now.
Yes, and that's going to be easier, I think, rather than short stories.
And will you focus on ego as much in future dealings?
The next few projects are going to be about the I. That's why this is called I Am Me. The next one's going to be called I Lie. It's about lying. So it's going to be more I-based.
What was the most surprising thing for you in kind of doing your research on this?
That we're all the same at the end of it. We put up these barriers between ourselves and say, well, like you and me right now, saying you and me, when really it's all just we're all the same person. It's circumstance that divides us. So if you take that out of the picture, we're all the same, and you can be a little more open, a little more forgiving of others, and especially yourself. And it just makes life a little better and happier.
So biggest piece of advice if someone's watching and they're thinking my workplace is unbearable, or any other situation, biggest piece of advice is kind of put yourself in someone else's shoes.
Exactly. Think of them as just a part of yourself.
All right, Ram, thank you so much. Great information. Good luck with the book, and it is available online, as you said.
That's right. And on my website, imeshortstories.com.
Great. Thanks so much. We're going to go check in with Todd now.